What's good, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for an MLB the Show 23 drafting and scouting tips and tricks video that was requested to me recently in the comment section of my zero overall draft only rebuild. Some people are struggling with this new scouting system that they put in this MLB the Show 23 game, and honestly, I can't blame anybody for struggling with this scouting system. It is honestly one of the sporting games that kind of just let you go out there and figure it out on your own. They do not really hold your hand on how to make really good draft classes. I think the MLB draft in real life compared to other sports, it's more of a crapshoot, and they're trying to mimic that in this game. However, I have found a few things that have really worked for me to get me some pretty consistently good draft classes in this game. At least when I've manually scouted. There have been a few times when I've turned scouting on auto and my draft classes haven't been the best, but in this video, I'm going to show you everything that I employ when I scout my drafts to get really good value, I think, all throughout the board, but particularly you want to nail the first two rounds. Depending on if you have competitive balance picks, you could have 3, 4 maybe picks in the first two rounds. Those are the picks that you really want to nail. Get people in with not only a high ceiling, but people that will actually be able to join the majors in just a couple of seasons perhaps, and not be 5 seasons away. And so got some strategy on how to do that. Let's hop into the video and figure out what I employ to get the best out of these drafts in MLB the Show 23. And for this video, I will be using a Pittsburgh Pirates franchise file, a brand new one. We're here at opening day of this franchise file, and step one to having a really good draft is nailing the scouts. You can change your scouts up here at this little handshake icon, contracts, scouts. And there's a very particular way I like to go about my scouts, and I'm going to show you that here. The first one, and this is just for me, you can put them in any order you want, but I always put on the bottom scouts, I put the cheapest scouts with at least 85 discovery, so it could be him. But if you can go get a big jump from like 85 to 97, or just get into the 90s with just a couple more thousand, I would always recommend it. So here, Angelo Monroe, 97 discovery at just $85,000 a year is a big time steal. And then on top of that, it looks like we already have one really good scout here. With my top scout, I go for somebody who has at least 90 efficiency and at least 90 position player. And so this scout right here is actually insane. But let's see if there's another scout that here. Look, we could save some money here and get 96 efficiency and 98 position players. So in terms of scouting a position player, this is about as good as you could get. And then we can come up here and get 90 efficiency with 97 pitchers. We can't afford this contract. Okay. All right, so that one wouldn't work. This guy already is pretty good with pitchers. He's better with position players, though. So let's see if we can find somebody with 90 plus efficiency and 90 plus pitchers. Now, this won't exist every single time. So if this doesn't exist, you can always. I'm trying to figure out my strategy here. Sorry. You can always just get the best you can for this year. Come back next year, hoping you can get somebody with 90 plus. So I'm not going to scout pitchers the absolute best this year, but I'm confident in future years we'll be able to fit somebody with 90 plus efficiency and 90 plus pitchers in the future, just because I think this is such a great value, and I think this is such a great value. We're just going to be a little bit inefficient with our pitching. That's fine. This is like a 1-year stopgap. Come back next year, look for scouts again, try to get a better pitcher scout. So why do I do this kind of layout now that I've talked around what I'm going to do with my scouts in this scenario. One, I like to have one scout discovering every single week. And I know that's not exactly the most popular of opinions. I know a lot of other content creators who are very successful in the draft do not discover very much, if at all, in their franchises. They kind of just focus on the other three attributes. I like discovery. It has helped me out a ton this year. In my athletics franchise, just a couple of examples. I think with my third or my fourth pick in a draft, I got a catcher, Alex Angeles, who is just an absolute beast of a hitter, switch hitting catcher. He came in at 66 overall, 90 potential. Again, I was able to get him later in the draft. Didn't even have to spend my first round pick on him. And you're not getting that if you don't discover. This last draft, it was a draft that did not look very good at the top, if I'm being honest. And then all of a sudden, our scouts come in, discover a first baseman who turns out to be the best player in the entire class. Maybe one pitcher you could say was better than him, but the best position player for sure. So I've just had too many good examples of a discovery scout helping me discover top end talent in the class, and B, I think an underrated part of discovery scouting is you're just going to have so many more options available to you in rounds 3 through 6, where I feel like a lot of people, me included, I'm just kind of forced to take players that I don't really have scouted just because you can't scout that many people in this game. That's just how it is. You have to pick and choose. You're going to have a lot of people unscouted. That's the way this game has been designed in the scouting department. Whether you hate it or you love it. So just having a bunch of players that are scouted that your scouts think are somewhere in the rank between like 50 and 150 you can be getting in these later rounds, you just, I think, greatly increase your chances of getting steals later in the draft. So I think a high-end discovery scout in that third spot, as cheap as you can get it, get at least 85, but I would highly recommend 90 plus. That's what I would do. And then these guys, Virgil Brady is going to be scouting a position player every single week of scouting. And then Josh Martin, again, not the most efficient here. He's actually almost as good as Virgil Brady at scouting position players. Wasn't the most ideal for a pitcher scout in this year. He will be scouting pitchers every single week. Unless, who knows, maybe there's just a plethora of position players he could switch over. But in general, I have a guy discovering every week, a guy scouting a position player every week, this guy just scouting pitchers every week. So there's the scouting. And what this does is whatever your scouts are doing, they're like super experts. You're gonna get a lot more accurate scouting reports than just having a guy who's maybe going for the 80s all around. Let's see, what kind of guy is that? Like getting this guy right here where he has no weaknesses but no strengths, that's fine, but you're just going to get a lot more done in a week with the higher efficiency, and you're going to get scouting reports that more reflect their skills, team rankings that more reflect their skills if you use higher level scouts at whatever you're asking them to do. So I think this is the meta for me personally for scouting. Of course, like I said, if this guy had position players and pitchers switched, this would be about as good as you could possibly do. Unfortunately, they're not. So let's now get into who I choose to scout in a given week. I'm going to go every single week. I'm going to tell you what I chose, why I chose it, etc., etc. So let's get into the first week of scouting. All right, so here we are, week 1. Haven't made my decisions yet. You always want to look at the top of the draft and look for potential generational players, which it honestly looks like this draft has either 1 or 2. Greg Watson for sure is going to be a generational shortstop. This I have no doubt. He also has hair up the wazoo. And then Douglas Boyd, kind of looking a little bit like Alex Angeles, who mentioned earlier. Just from that, kind of look generational. How you can tell for generational is you're going to be at the top of the draft class. You're not going to be, you're not going to find true generationals. You can find 99 potential, but not like 80 overall guys later. but you're not going to find true generationals, the guys that are high 70s, low 80s with 99 potential that are ranked outside like the top 5 or 6 of a class. So top of the class, you're looking for potential 65 to 99, and you're looking for overall to be really high. A lot of the times it is 65 to 99. This is a telltale sign this guy's generational. Sometimes it can be more like Douglas Boyd though and still be it, where his ratings are up the wazoo. What I've seen is sometimes if they're 80 plus overall, it'll be this. And if they're high 70s overall, it'll be more like this. And so that's also 18 years old is a big telltale sign as well. So looks like we have some generational prospects. Also just like to look for how much of the top of the draft is kind of riddled with closers and guys who just aren't actually going to go that high. And it looks like there's a decent bit here. Just because all those guys that are maybe ranked lower are going to be taken higher because the CPU, they said when the game came out that they won't take closers and relievers early. That's not true, but they do take a lot less. Like these guys, closers won't all go where they're projected to go. So that's what you look for at the top of the draft. Now, what I always do is I'm going to start scouting these generational players. But since I'm pretty sure they're generational, let's just pretend they're not here. And I'm looking for somebody to scout. What do I look for? Something that I found out in this game, a decent bit into it, is that on these rating scales, I should show a non-pitcher. Let's show Connie Braun, because he's actually a really good example of what I'm talking about. Looks like a sick prospect, right? That potential could be all the way up to 97 overall, all the way up to 87. But let's just say he comes in and his potential is 95, right? He's 2 lower than his very, very highest potential. That would mean that every single thing here is also 2 lower than its highest. Now, I've only tested this and proven it for players that I have scouted. I am not actually 100% sure if this is true for unscouted players. Let's just say we had Connie Brown's started. This scouting profile looks really good. I am willing to bet pretty confidently. In fact, I'd be willing to put a lot of money on it that this guy is not a potential player. Why? Because if he has 95 potential, that means his overall is also only 2 lower than its max on that scale, and thus would be an 85 overall player, which that's just not going to happen. He is not a generational player. He's not going to be 85 overall. And so if you're saying, well, for a non-generational player, the highest these guys typically go is about mid 70s, maybe 75 overall. So I think this guy's ceiling is actually going to be 75 overall, 85 potential. And again, I think that's this guy's ceiling. And so what I typically look for is a gap between their overall range and their potential range of at least 15. And there are a couple of exceptions to this rule. Like I said, generational players are going to look just perfect until you start scouting them. Then they'll actually jump down and your scouts won't think they're as good. But an unscouted generational player will often look like this. But for all these other guys, like we're talking, this is 17. I think that's a good range. We're talking here, what's this, 23, that's good. So I typically try to be within that 15 to 30 range between their overall cap and their potential cap. You also have to be aware of the caps that go to 99 overall, just because you can't go over 99 overall, so they might be different. In that case, you can maybe look at the lowest overall and the lowest potential to see what those gaps are. But just players that have, let's take a look. Like James Kim, perfect example right here. This guy, his overall cap is 96 and his potential cap is 99. Now he looks like the best prospect ever. And you know what? I'll scout him. He's going to be who we scout right now. And I'm going to take a note to look at James Kim's ratings. I would be willing to bet a lot of money that he's going to be a mid to high 70s overall, but a high C potential. at most. At most, he might even be worse than that. So his potential, I'd be willing to put money on it that his potential isn't above C. Which, if you look at that range, 65 to 99, C's pretty low. But what you can tell is that the overall and the potential is only off by 3, and so his potential is only going to be 3 higher than his overall, and thus I'm pretty confident in saying that it won't be higher than a C. So we'll scout him though, just for the sake of this exercise. What I do for pitcher, typically I just look at the top of the board here and I see which kind of zone has the most. I'm seeing some West, I'm seeing some, I think what I see the most of though is international, and it's pretty safe to say international is going to be one of the 2 most populated. So I almost always start scouting all starting pitcher international prospects, and then in this 3rd spot, I start my discovery, and I typically start it with pitchers international, so that if we discover them, they can start being scouted immediately by our pitching scout. And this one will not change for quite a while. I'll be cycling through players here, I'll be cycling through discoveries here, but this one I will keep until every single starting pitcher in the international region is 80% scouted, and it goes at 15% a week. They start at like 5%, so what's that, 5 weeks? 5 weeks, I'll probably do 5 weeks in another one, and that'll give me 4 weeks to kind of just fill in other pitchers that got left out that I'm really intrigued by. And I think just because there's so many pitchers in the draft, so many people at one position, it's worth it to do this kind of scouting, where with position players, this kind of method only scouts just a handful of people at a time. I'll show you how many pitchers we're all scouting at 15% in 1 week next week with this, but this will be my first week. Let's come back next week and see how we did. Scouting should be set to manual, and here we go. All right, week 2. As you can see, these ranges are tightening with James Kim, but the potential and the overall are still just 3 off. And so even more confident that this guy's going to be a high C potential at best. We're scouting 29 players here. You can get 20. Sometimes I've even seen 30 plus, which I guess we're not even that far off of here. Scouting international pitchers. So we're getting every single one of those guys at plus 15% scouted. We're starting to see their interest in us and a bunch of other things. We just scouted 4 because we have a 90 plus discovery. How much you can discover, what the cap is on how many players you can discover in a given week is so much higher when you have a really good discovery scout. If we had a guy in the 70s, we're getting like max of 2. But I often find that I hit my max of 4 players in a week when I have a 90 plus discovery scout, even if he's in the 3rd slot in my, the priority slot here. So we'll finish James Kim. I don't know if I wouldn't do this in a real franchise, but we're using James Kim as an example of a player that I think a lot of people look at and think is really good, but in actuality, he's not going to be. And then we'll start looking at some other people after that. But I think I'll do one more week of keeping everything the same, actually, which I don't do a ton of, but I think everything I want to do for at least one more week. So we'll go to week 3 here now. Week 3, now taking a look at James Kim, still looks really good. If you're thinking, oh, I could get a guy in his 70s with B potential very easily, that looks really good. Still, I'm going to contend that you will not be. Again, I'm pretty confident at least Greg Watson is generational, and we have the number 1 pick, so that's just the guy that you pick. I might pick someone else just to kind of show what it's like to not draft a generational, but also it's really hard for me not to draft a generational guy if he's there, so I might just draft a generational anyway. So let's go ahead and find ourselves another position player that has somewhere in the range of what I'm looking for in terms of the gap between overall and potential. So my process for this, I'm not saying I'm going to scout this guy, as I find someone within the exceptional range like this one, 10, not big enough for me really. This one's 30, okay, interested. Go in. Does he have the skill set I'm looking for? from a first baseman. Probably not a good enough hitter for me to play first base, but looking at speed and fielding, could he be somebody that plays third base? I don't know. Fielding's not great. His arm is going to be a missile, it looks like. But I'm intrigued, maybe towards the end if I still have time. He would be somebody. Here's a guy, Victor Jimenez, 20. This guy looks to be a good contact hitter, but again, I kind of want power at first base. So this is kind of what I do. I find guys who have the gap that I'm looking for, and then I go to see if their skill set matches what I want. So I'm going to keep going through those until I find somebody that I think is worth scouting, and I'll see you then. So one guy I'm intrigued with is Peter Major here, right field. That's a 33-point gap between his overall and his potential. That's a little bit big, but he's also a guy that we could potentially get with our third-round pick. I feel like after the first couple of rounds, you can loosen up that structure, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But he also could be in play with our second-round pick, mostly just because he could be a really fun. I always like in right field finding somebody that's going to actually have a cannon of an arm. I haven't had much luck with it in this game, but I think Peter Major could have that cannon arm that you like in right field. So I'm intrigued by him. So that's why I'm going to choose him. He has a specific thing I want for a right fielder. His overall, the potential gap is similar to what I want. It's a little bit high, but because he's 22 years old, we're going to get 100% scouting this week. If you didn't know, how much scouting you get per week is dependent on age. 18-year-olds get the least, and then you just get more and more scouting per week as you get older along the scale. And so also I want to this week switch up my pitcher international. I typically go at the very least, I like to go every spot except for catcher, depending on if you need catcher, at wherever part in the country your team is and international. And then if you have more time after that, you can start to go, branch further out. And so we're central here in Pittsburgh, I would think, maybe east, I don't know. I think Pittsburgh would be considered central. So we're going to do that. Already switched this, and we're not quite at 80% with these starting pitchers yet. Still have a few weeks on that, so that will remain the same. Let's get to week 4. All right, week 4. Peter Major, he's going to be kind of a high 50s, low 60s overall with A potential. That's the kind of guy. We have a couple of picks near, 79. We have 75 and 78. At that range, I'm happy with that. What I typically look for is somebody that's going to be at the very least high 50s, because he's probably at the most a year away from being able to at least be in AA with some upside in him. And I think he qualifies. I'm going to go ahead and, with my criteria again, search for another player. I like this kind of 70s range, so I'll probably try to find somebody else in that range. Of course, still need to find a bunch of people to take at 41 as well. But since we have 2 picks in the 70s range, that's a range I really want to get to know in this draft. Another guy I'm intrigued with here is Willie Barrero. Again, a little bit wide on that gap. It's 32 points towards the high end. So we're probably talking about, if he's going to have a potential, he's going to be more, low 60s. But with these picks in the 70s, that I'm okay with. The guys I want to be higher overall, like high 60s, low 70s. Those are kind of the first top 50 picks. And so we'll get to them. Just from what I've been scouting so far, these are the guys that are popping on screen to me. So Willie Barrero, we'll scout him. We'll switch this up to, let's do infield within the central. And let's take a look at how far along these. We got Tejera here at 50%. So we still got 2 more weeks to get up to 80 on these international starting pitchers. All right, another week gone. This time we didn't even discover a single infielder in the central. It's gonna happen. You're gonna have weeks where you're getting 4. You're gonna have weeks where you're getting none. It kind of just depends on the draft class. We haven't even really looked to see if anybody that we've discovered is particularly good yet, but we'll get there. Willie Barrero, he's up to 85%. Another guy who's looking to probably be in the 50s in his overalls, gonna be hopefully high B, maybe even low A if he ends up on that high end. Definitely somebody in contention with one of those picks in the 70s. And so The couple of position players that I like in the 70s, probably some pitchers are going to come in that range as well. I'm probably good scouting players in that 70s range. I want to focus on the 41 and the number 1 pick. All right, I'm going to be honest with you. I've scoured all over this draft and kind of somebody that's going to be good in that second round range from position players. I'm not seeing it, if I'm being honest. I'm just not. I think everyone is either going to go before that or there might be available with our picks later. So kind of looking like 41 to me is going to be a place where we might be taking a pitcher if somebody that ends up being worth it here. It looks like Scott Olson we already have all the way done just because he's a little bit older. So I'll have one more week to get these 18-year-olds scouted though. But 41, Miguel Tejera here. That's looking like a good pitcher. So looks like we'll have options kind of in that 41 range for pitching. So at this rate, even though I'm pretty confident these guys are generational prospects, I do want to show you what the difference is of like how important it is to actually get a generational prospect to 100% if you want your scouts to be accurate with them. Because look at Greg Watson right now. Guarantee you, I'd be willing to put money on the fact that he's a generational prospect. But as soon as we start scouting him, our scouts think he's going to suck. Even though we have a guy with 95 plus efficiency, 96 efficiency and 98 position players, about as good of a scout as we could possibly get with eyes on Greg Watson. Our scouts are going to start to make him fall down the board. It's ridiculous. So for some reason, there aren't any infielders apparently worth discovering in this class. This is probably my least lucky run of discovery. Really not showing the value of my discovery scout, but I think I've shown it with other draft classes. So maybe we'll go back to pitcher. Maybe that's just where all the discovery scouts are in this class. So again, I want to show you what it's like to scout a generational player and just kind of they all go the same way when you scout them. It's kind of weird. It has been 3 weeks since my discovery scout has discovered a single soul. This is ridiculous. What is going on? This has honestly never, ever happened. How is there nobody to discover in this class? It's kind of nuts. But like I said, we discovered this absolutely 100% going to be generational player at number 1, but all of a sudden we scout him and our scouts are like, no, this guy's trash. He's way overrated. None of these ratings look particularly good. He's going to be a good fielder and got some speed on him. Maybe some contact. That's all he's ever going to be. Let's continue to scout him though, because that's not how it's going to end up being. And we've finally gotten our starting pitchers up to 80%. And I decided that just from looking at it, the second one I want to spend another 5 weeks on is the Central. So weeks 6 through 10 will be starting pitcher Central. Hopefully we can start to actually discover some guys, or else this will be probably the worst advertisement to get a discovery scout you have ever seen in your life. Hey, we discovered somebody, only one though. But as you can see, getting up to 100%. Now all of a sudden he's getting ranked a little bit higher, but it's still not totally accurate. And this is the cycle you will see every single time with generational prospects. I'm going to keep them on for one more. This isn't the best. I know I'm showing you how to scout, but I think I've explained my processes enough of what I'm looking for. Now I'm just trying to show you how to identify, I guess, a generational prospect with this section of it. We will switch now to, let's do pitcher. Let's try to get all the pitchers that we can discover here. We'll go east and west. And let's chug on through another week of scouting. I'm almost halfway through. And boom, he was at 100% last week. Scouting him that other week. Now these are the ranges that you look at and say, this could be an actual generational prospect. You know his potential is going to be 99. So that's going to be at the very high end of his range. Now, like I said, for generationals, the ranges can be a little bit tricky. That it's not guaranteed to be 82 overall, unlike with most people where that range will always be the same. But all these, the right-hand sides of these presents, he's going to have either like 70 to 72 contact right, 67 to 69 contact left, 63 to, you get it. It's going to be within just a couple. With generational prospects, it can be a little bit off, but with everybody else, it is the same. One other caveat to that is actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is velocity with pitchers, because velocity is always in a range of 5 with pitchers, no matter what. As you can see here with Scott Olson, where everything's in a range of 12, but his pitcher velocity is in a range of 5. So if he ends up on the very high end of his range, 71 overall, 94 overall, actually that would mean he'd have 75 velocity. But if he's somewhere in the middle, he could still be at a different spot, in that pitch velocity, just because it's a different range. Just wanted to give that caveat there. But we'll keep chugging along. So Greg Watson's done. I don't feel the need to also scout Douglas Boyd. Although if I was in a real franchise and I was only scouting one of these guys, I would scout Douglas Boyd, because he's the one I'm like fairly certain it's a generational, but I'm not 100% sure. Where Greg Watson, there's not a doubt in my mind it's generational. So going to continue to find some position players that I like, and I'll let you know when I found one. Here's a skill set I'm intrigued with here with Francisco Huerta, another guy who could be in play in the 70s. He's more of maybe a higher floor, lower ceiling kind of guy, with his potential being capped at 80, but there is, a 12-point gap there. Again, a little bit outside of my range, but I think that range is something you definitely want in your first 2 rounds. After that, I'm okay with taking maybe a little bit lower on that ceiling, but higher on the floor, just because if you're going high ceiling, low floor in the later rounds, you're probably talking about guys that are in the 40s in overalls or low 50s, which I'm just not particularly interested in myself. If you want like an all potential class, you want to show like, hey dude, I got 5 A potential players in the class, then always go towards the top end of that range, kind of near 30 in the difference, I would say, maybe even up to 40. But if you want guys that are going to actually be able to make it to the bigs in any reasonable amount of time, once you start getting past the first couple of rounds, you got to maybe shorten that range a little bit for you. I would still recommend at least going 10 plus if you can, with a rare exception for a guy who's like going to be really good off the bat. But there we go. There's our scouting for this week. Let's switch this over to Wes actually before we do it. Get another week down the books. Francisco Huerta is now 85% scouted, and I think I know enough about him to say he'd be a decent pick in the 70s. I don't know if I'd love the pick, but I would definitely wouldn't hate it either. So there you have it. Going to continue to look for more position players. Not everyone that you scout's going to be a hit either, but we're just trying to find the people in the ranges that we like. Like I said about the possibility of coming back to this player later, we're going to go Jose Baez. He's in that range. He's right at 30. Difference between potential and overall. Let's see where he lands. So, like I said, with this not always working, Baez might not be the one. Like, his overall ceiling is 62. Overall floor is 38. So this is a guy who might have good potential, but is probably going to be one of those like 4+ year projects before you even think about putting them in the MLB. Just in terms of overall wise, our scouts are lower on him now. The only thing that's going to be above average about him is going to be his arm at this rate. So I'm willing to move on after the first week of scouting with this guy. The guy I actually kind of overlooked in that 41 overall range, I guess, is Bernardo Zamora. I guess I just thought he wasn't ever going to be a good enough offensive player in my first go through, but at this point, let's at least give him a shot. So Bernardo Zamora going to get himself scouted. Also, what is up with discovery in this? It is easily the worst I've ever had. Look, I've ever had discovery. This is also our last week discovering pitchers as a position group rather than individual players. So that's fun. Scouts came back. Not impressed with Bernardo Zamora, but it looks like all the guys worth discovering are international pitchers. So I'll probably just keep it on that until they stop doing it, because they keep discovering 4 over there and like none anywhere else I try to discover. So sometimes you just got to find where the players are. That's kind of how it goes with discovery. So Zamora, Scott's not impressed, willing to change off of it. You don't need to get every guy to 100 if your scouts are like super low on a guy after 1 week. I know I proved that counter to that point with a generational player, but oftentimes with non-generational players, that's just, they're not typically wrong when they're really low on a guy after the first week. And another guy I'm interested in here in the 40s range, mostly just because he's a switch hitter with good contact right in his future, perhaps maybe good fielding as well. A lot of negatives in there, which is probably why I swept over him in my first pass through. Sometimes you just gotta scout the players that are on the board. You can't really choose, right? And so we're gonna start scouting prospects here. And this is where we start to maybe identify some pitchers who we got up to 80 that we want to get up to 100, or that we don't have scouted that we'd like to start scouting that would be on our board for us. What I look for in pitcher is I want high velocity, high break, and high stamina, because those three things just they're gonna be what they're gonna be when this guy enters. And then with the per nines, I just don't want any like super glaring weakness. I prefer everything to look like it's going to be at least high 30s, low 40s. You can get that kind of player. That's the kind of pitcher I'm looking for in general, with at least probably stamina, velocity, and break. I'd like to all be in the 70s if possible. This Castro guy is not going to be there velocity and break wise, but in terms of the well-rounded per nines, the stamina, he could be worth it, but he's also the fourth guy on the board, and we're not taking him fourth. So there's that. Looks like there's a guy that we discovered here from in the international region who could use some additional scouting, I'd say. See, now we're seeing we discovered some good scouts, some good pitchers. We just haven't had good luck discovering any other position in this draft. So looks like pitchers could be available for us throughout the draft. But I'm gonna go ahead and find a pitcher that I want to get more information on and see when I find him. Found a guy here in this 40s range, Lamont McDermott. Stamina is going to be in a good spot, maybe a little bit low on that velocity and break, but you can't really have the perfect pitcher unless maybe you're picking in the first round. So it's got a lot of what I'm looking for and could be available in the 40s. So I'm going to move that up to second priority, continue to discover pitchers internationally until they stop giving me 4. Taking a look at the guys we're scouting, Lamont McDermott. Going to be a guy in the 60s with B potential. Honestly, solid pick. Not going to be the highest upside guy you can get, probably at 40, but really solid player. And then Nigel Reagan here. I'm still interested probably in getting that other week with him, but let me find a different pitcher. And we're still discovering 4 international pitchers every week. It's kind of nuts. Our scouts are just really high on Emilio Castillo. They have him as the 4th best player in the draft, despite being the 70th ranked by MLB. This looks like a prime candidate for that second pick. Doesn't have the velocity I'm looking for, but break-wise and stamina-wise, exactly what I'm looking for. In terms of per nines, maybe going to be a little bit low on the walks, which is one that you don't want to be low on, but I think it's worth getting that extra 20%, maybe shortening these gaps just a little bit, getting a better idea of what he can be. And so this is going to be my week 12 lineup for scouting. All right, both these guys are at 100% now. Looks like Nigel Reagan could be a good, if we want a positional player at, in the pick 40s, Nigel Reagan could certainly be it, but it looks like Emilio Castillo. Our scouts are just even more cemented. It looks like there's a good chance of at least being mid-30s, the high 30s in every one of his per nines. I like Emilio Castillo a ton, so he'll definitely be on our board. Pitcher could be available later though, so maybe we go with Reagan, but it looks like I think we got 2 solid prospects for 40. I'd like to maybe try to get 1 or 2 more these last couple of weeks though. Here's a guy in Will Carpenter that I'm pretty interested in. Contact, a little bit of fielding. Let's go ahead and put him on the board, see if we can't get some scouting out of him in the last couple of weeks. Now let's go to our pitcher. I think Miguel Tejera is a guy that could be in play at 41 that I just want to get extra scouting in as well. Lines look good. Velocity's in the 70s. Pitch break's going to be mid 70s, maybe in 80s. Stamina, I'd like to just get that extra bit on to see if it's more likely to be in the 70s or the 60s. That's kind of why I want that up to 100% on him. and another week of 4 international picks. So the reason we weren't getting any players discovered is because literally every player that was to be discovered in this class was an international pitcher. Scouts turned out to be a little bit low on Will Carpenter. That's fine. Tejera, though, he's borderline. He's going to be around 70 stamina, which is probably like the lowest you want for a pitcher, but velocity, mid 70s, maybe high 70s with the break looking really good. I like Tejera a lot, maybe even more than the other guy, even though our scouts have the other guy higher. So let's find one more pitcher that we like to get up to 100%. Let's just see. Probably not Tejera because he's injured. Just throws gas. He's injured, so probably not. Let's go Chris Otto. Yeah, he doesn't have the break that you want, but velocity's in a fine spot and stamina's in a great spot. We'll get that extra 20%. And let me find a position player. I don't love him, but we're in the last week of scouting. Let's go Adam Mooney here. I can't believe we're still getting 4 every single time. So this will be the last week. We've got nothing else to scout. Let's go ahead and see how we did by drafting these players up, shall we? We're at the draft. What I'm doing right now is I'm just putting guys on our board in no particular order. Typically what I like to put my board on is people who were discovered or people that we scouted. That's kind of what I like to make my board out of. And then at the end, what I like to do, actually don't want that guy on my board, but is maybe just kind of look at some closing pitchers. I tend to not just scout closing pitchers. Sometimes I will, but just kind of looking for ratings, ranges, and again, that overall the potential gaps that I like that I think could result in some closing pitchers that I like. I remember I had to write them down because I wasn't discovering them. I liked the look of, Josh Worth. I liked another one. Not a closer, was he a reliever? It's fine. I'm probably not going to draft him. So this is our board. I think we've got really good players for at least the first 4 picks in the draft, and then hopefully some discovered guys past that. That's kind of my strategy with drafting. I don't think this is going to be my best draft ever, but I think it certainly has potential to be solid. Let's go in and find out just how we did. All right. I'm nervous. I had to take a bunch of notes because you can't make your draft board until the day of the draft. And so I'm just kind of trying to find my notes here. We've got the first pick, and we're taking Greg Watson. I know I said maybe I would make it harder by not taking a generational prospect, but it's fun taking generational prospects in a draft, man. It really is. And I like to do it whenever it's available. This is actually the second time I've seen 2 in the same draft. One was the season 1 draft of the season 2 draft. Yeah, the season 2 draft of our Open Athletics franchise. And then, of course, this one. Can't remember. Did I see it in my draft on the real as well? I might have once. Those like generational prospects, they get generated pretty consistently here, more than you'd probably like. But the 2 generational prospects, at least the guys that I think are generational, go in the first 2 picks. And then the Tigers will take that one pitcher's like 5th on the board, Scott Olson. I thought that's a solid pick as well. So we got all these guys on our board. Let's see who lasts. We've got these guys left on our board. We got Josh Mills, who we only have ranked, scouted 55%. Oh boy, the board did not fall well for us at all. None of the guys that I actually wanted. You know what? Even though I think this is a bad pick, I want to be able to easily illustrate it. Talked about him in the beginning. So, wow, all the guys that we wanted went the top 40, huh? Tejera went that early. Castillo went that early. All these guys that definitely would have been in play. And that's just going to be the way it goes sometimes. I mean, a lot of these guys, you're expecting them to go, right? But the guys that we were really hoping would fall, mostly Emilio Castillo and Miguel Tejera, with the two guys that I was really hoping would fall to us. Oh, also Nigel Reagan, man. Lamont McDermott as well. We got extremely unlucky, and you're gonna get unlucky, and you have to have contingency plans. Who would I draft for real here? I would consider Josh Mills for sure. Rob Kemp would be in consideration. Not Munoz. I wouldn't draft him. But I'm going to here. I'd probably draft Josh Mills. No, where is Kim supposed to go? He's supposed to go 32. We'll take him right here, just to prove that he is the guy that I thought he was going to be. Hopefully, the guys that we want are still there. Josh Mills. I wanted him last time. Let's take him now. Now we got this. See, the value of our Discovery Scout is coming into play now. Guys that we thought we were going to be able to pick in these spots, they all went super early. Oh, I guess we could take. Remember Willie Barrero. I am going to take Willie Barrero actually. There's somebody else that I like a lot. I guess I just forgot to fill out my board. Oh, there's guys that I like. I like Barrero here. This is our 78th pick. Who do I like more? Major or Barrero? I like Barrero more. So we're going to take Barrero here at pick 78. And then it looks like that right fielder that we wanted is gone. There's another right fielder we scouted. Is he gone as well? Looks like he is. So now we're in round 4. We'll take a closer here. Why not? And then Christian Chaney here in round 5. And in round 6, we're just swinging for the fences. All right. Is there anybody? Okay, so look, here's Robbie Haas, starting pitcher. Top 30 player according to our scouts, available in the 6th. There we go. I'm gonna sign these players. We're gonna look at their ratings and we'll see what kind of draft we had. All right, the moment of truth. Did I just sell or did we end up with a solid class? Okay, you know what? This is looking pretty good. I like what we're seeing. So Greg Watson was a generational prospect. Didu, Lottie James Kim. I was worried there. I was like, we got a 78 overall, but I forgot that it was for this video specifically, and that I wouldn't have drafted him. Overall comes in 3 less than his potential. All these ratings, if I'm sure you would have looked wherever his ranges were, they're on that same range. What did I say? It was going to be between 70 to 72 contact. It was going to be between 69 and 66. So all these ended up being 1 lower than his max on his overall. Everyone, if you go back and look, they're all going to be that. So James Kim is going to be the same. So my biggest piece of advice, something that I don't think people really pay attention to, is the gap in their overall and their potential, because it took me a while to figure out that, hey, like everything on their scale is going to come in at the exact same number. If he's, the very bottom of his scale is all going to come in at the bottom. Like Willie Barrero was actually better. So his overall cap was 62 and his potential cap was 94. He ends up being 1 over that on both of them, and thus 1 over on every single rating. And this is a sick pick. Absolute. I'm glad that I actually went back and checked that. Solid reliever. I think reliever, the bar that you're setting to be a successful pick is lower than everywhere else. 61 with 88 potential, 77 stamina, 78 velocity, 64 break. I'm fine with. Walks and hits per 9 are a little low, but I don't think they're so low that they can't develop. 57, 85 at this range, 66, 84 is an absolute dub. So that's all I have. I think if this is a draft that I was going into a franchise with, I would be absolutely happy with it, except for this pick, which, like I said, I'll say it again, I wouldn't have actually made. I just, I guess I forgot to finish creating my board when I created my board. because I would have drafted probably Josh Mills, and then at 75 I would have taken that right fielder. Or I would have taken Barrero, and at 78 I would have taken that right fielder. Let's see if I can find him real quick. So is it him? No. Right field. Yeah, it's fine. It's whatever. The right field was probably a solid pick, if unspectacular. And now I can't find our picks again. So I think this is a good draft. Hopefully it was informative to you. Hopefully I answered some questions from the comment of our draft only franchise. Now hopefully you can be better at drafting, because it's really fun in this game. Actually, I think the updates they made it very intriguing. There's a lot of unknown about it. Like I said, my plans for 41 just evaporated before my eyes. Had to make a panic move. Luckily for this video, I was able to make a bad pick on purpose, because if not, I don't know what I would have done in real life. Well, what I would have done is finish creating my board, so I would have had a better plan, but that's besides the point. I think we had a good draft, and if you follow these tips, I think you'll have a lot of drafts just like it. Thanks for tuning into this video. I'll be back soon with some more MLB The Show 23 content, specifically my draft only franchise and my athletics franchise, and I will see you then.